God, the Shepherd of Israel, surrounds us with His protecting love even when we walk in dark and dangerous places. In the history of Israel, God used the prophets, priests, and judges to lead the people rightly in their walk with God. He gives His flock a shepherd's care. It is a comfort to know that our shepherd constantly leads and guides us with His rod and His staff. His rod restores us to the right path, the path of righteousness, when we have strayed. God does this by sending suitable shepherds from time to time. In the 19th century, France was immersed in worldliness and sexual pleasures. Jean-Marie Vianney was chosen by God to redeem France. The life of Jean-Marie Vianney is a story that really shows that with God all things are possible. This is a story of a saint who, with only 2 years formal education before entering upon his priestly studies, had the greatest difficulty passing his examinations and becoming a priest. This student is dull. It is not enough to be freed of stains of character for a priest. Our opinion is that he should not be allowed to be a priest. The experts judged based on their evaluation. They could not see the depth of John Vianney's spirituality. The Vicar General asked, "Is he pious?" Yes, he was undoubtedly pious. "Ordain him," decided the Vicar General. "The grace of God will do the rest." Till today, France could not give birth to a greater saint than Jean-Marie Vianney. Jean-Marie Vianney. Jean-Marie Vianney was born in Dardilly, a small village in France, in the midnight of May 8, 1786. Matthew Vianney and Maria Belus were his parents. They were poor peasants. John too had to help his family members in their hard work to earn their daily bread. John was sent to look after the sheep. He had to feed an old donkey, 4 cows, and 3 sheep. The boy was naturally pious. His chief pleasure was prayer, and playing at churches was his favorite recreation when he instructed his companions in the rudiments of religion. An altar was made soon on the top of a high place. There was no shortage of decoration. At the middle of the altar, John's statue of a lady was installed. Then they will start singing songs and reciting prayers. Then will start the little parish priest Vianney's sermon. It was almost a repetition of the homily given by the parish priest on the previous Sunday. Sometimes the co-shepherds will not be seen after the sermon. Immediately, the small father would recite some prayers and end the performance. John considered work as a noble thing. Labor will enhance spiritual and bodily growth. You must prepare your souls this way. Destroy the weeds completely to let grow the seeds of God. Labor lifted him up in spirituality. John Vianney started his devotional practices from childhood with a cross made of 2 dried sticks tied together. From his youth, he was filled with a great desire to win souls for the good God by becoming a priest. Later, many remarked that he got the priesthood by God's grace, and history proved that it was God's grace indeed. Social and religious background. Dardilly village is set among the low hills that rise in the neighborhood of Lyons. It is beautified by farmlands and green forests. Most of the villagers were farmers. They worked very hard to earn their livelihood. Though poor, they were rich in living a peaceful life. Even when many cities deviated from faith, Dardilly safeguarded this precious jewel. The parents paid keen interest to teach their children gospel stories, to recite prayers, and to do other devotional exercises regularly. Political background. It was a time of political unrest and social inequalities. The lords of France lived comfortably without listening to the cries of the poor. A series of disturbances followed, and the French Revolution started after 3 years of the birth of Jean Vianney. The cry for equality, fraternity, and freedom made the country a battlefield. It had its consequences in the religious faith too. There was strenuous effort to wipe out religious faith and, if possible, God himself from the country. Saying God's name was a treason. They burned down churches and religious houses. The priests were led to gallows daily. Those cruel men did not show mercy even to women and children. Rays of hope. There still existed a strong Christian community maintaining their solid faith. They celebrated Holy Mass clandestinely by loyal priests who risked their lives to bring the sacraments to the flock. They made use of isolated places like cattle sheds for religious activities. Maria Vianney received his first Holy Communion behind closed doors in a private house. They were rarely able to administer the sacraments. As heaps of straws were kept at the door, no one could even guess what was going on inside the cattle shed. By the end of the 19th century, Emperor Napoleon put an end to the revolution. Peace was restored in the country. Freedom of religion was declared, but only few religious people survived as most of them could not escape death from the hands of the murderers. In many parish priests were not available for the celebration of sacraments. There was an old priest called Father Bailey at Echeley near Dardilly. The Vianney family. Vianney family was an exemplary family in Dardilly village. There were no fights nor arguments in the family. Besides being a prosperous farmer, Matthew was also a man of faith and much given to the practice of the Christian virtue of charity. Mary was very strict in spiritual observances, helped her husband in distributing the hard-earned money to the poor. John Vianney confessed that it was his mother who led him along the path of holiness. Beggars had a special place in their house. They never closed their doors to welcome the poor. Matthew Vianney was at the top in holding truth and justice aloft. He was a good father and loving husband. His wife was noble and earnest in character, formation of her children. Mary took much care in disciplining John. She sowed seeds of love of God in the heart of John. What she sowed in him produced hundredfold fruits. Once a gentleman praised him and said, "You are extremely fortunate to get this much zeal in prayer from childhood." For this John said, "After God, I owe it to my mother, she was so good." Virtue passes readily from the heart of a mother into that of her children. A child that has the happiness of having a good mother can never look at her or think of her without tear. She taught him to recite prayers when he started to talk well at the age of 3. John took special care to recite prayers at the particular time allotted for him. Mary presented him a statue of Our Lady to express her love towards him. Another thing that John loved in his childhood was a small rosary. Father Bailey. Father Bailey conducted the basic education of John Vianney. It seems that at the first sight of John Vianney, Father Bailey was edified and had an insight about him. But he came to know that John had not enough intelligence to match with his goodness. Disregarding this defect, both of them started their mission. John Mary Vianney started learning Latin when he was old enough to complete his ordinary studies. Father Bailey would rush to those places where there were sick and dying. Father Bailey was always ready to hear confession. He became an ideal, humble priest in John's heart. This love for his people must have prompted him to start a school. Seeing many souls breathing their last without receiving sacraments, Father Bailey thought of starting a school to train those young men who have a divine call to priesthood. Later, they could join the seminary and study. John was also happy when he heard about the school. John was 19 years when he joined Bailey's school with the consent of his parents. He was the oldest of them by age, but others were ahead of him in studies. One of his fellow students, Matthias Loras, who afterwards became the first bishop of Dubuque, assisted him in his Latin lessons, but that effort did not produce much results. Feeling pity upon John, Bailey consoled him. But John was desperate. He replied, "Enough, father, I am going back. I can't grasp Latin and grammar. God may not be calling me." John took his box and returned home. At his home, his father was very unhappy more than his mother, for he felt disgraced of his son turning back from the seminary. While roaming around without any aim, he met his old friend Maria. He smiled and she too. "John, I like you. Shall we get married?" Too quick was her question. The meaning he gave for the word like was quite different from what she gave. He felt the danger involved in not explaining her the meaning of the word properly. Pilgrimage. Every time John Vianney's prayer was, "Lord, bless me, enlighten my mind. I want to study and become a priest. My interest is to work in your vineyard." Understanding his fervor, a friend said, "Make a pledge to go on a pilgrimage to Mount Lourdes, to the church of St. Francis Regis." In the Mount too, he had a new topic to pray. Waves of war. He reached home after the pilgrimage. He had to face a great obstacle while getting ready to go again to Bailey's school. Austria and Spain had declared war against France. The enemies were attacking France from both sides. Due to shortage of men in the army, Napoleon had ordered compulsory military service. The police were raiding each house to take away young men, and Vianney's name too was on the list. He had no hesitation to fight for his motherland, but had the fear that his religious studies would break. He found a substitute for him on payment of 300 francs, but the substitute changed his mind at the last moment. Finding no other way, he went to the military camp. The life in the camp was horrible, polluted with liquor, bad songs, and blasphemy. While seeking a way to escape from there, by the grace of God, he was affected by severe fever and was admitted in the hospital at Lyons. There also he prayed to become a priest. John started to live in disguise with the family of Cloida, a widow of Perry-Fate, and her 4 children, taking the false name Jerome Vincent. The secret police approached John's parents with a demand that they should find out and hand over John, who escaped from the camp. If not, they would be killed. Only Father Bailey was there to console him. Vianney spent his time reading the Bible and telling saint stories to the 4 brothers. Though he had the tension of having run away from the camp, he was safe there. Slowly, the war ended. Napoleon conquered Austria. According to the terms of the treaty, Napoleon married the Austrian princess and became related to Austria. He gave pardon to all who lived in disguise, and John breathed fresh air. A few days later, he had returned home. His mother fell sick. She died on February 8, 1811. John Vianney believed that his mother, who helped and encouraged him much in his religious call, would definitely pray for him in heaven. Father Bailey received Vianney, who came to him with a broken heart, saying, "You are always welcome here." John was determined this time to stoop down to any level in order to become a priest.